Charlie Whinney, and I am an artist with a studio right up in the Lake District in the north of England. I originally studied architecture at Kingston University, just down the road from Bracknell, and but then having gone into designing buildings and working in an office and visiting the building sites and stuff like that, I then found actually what I really wanted to do and what I was good at doing was actually using the physical materials myself. So I then went back to study, and I learned to be a cabinet maker. I did a 2-year course at LivelyWood, like learning how to make dovetails and like all that stuff, like sharpening tools and using a plane. And with that, it was really a fantastic chance to to learn about how you take one material and then you physically do processes on it and then turn it into something else. About half of my work is in the UK, and the rest of it is all abroad. Here in the UK, it's mainly for public sector clients. So working for town councils, making sculptures, and also for doing sort of exhibition work and stuff like that. We have done a big commission for the Chelsea Flower Show a few years ago, and then for cancer research. And I've also done a really big sculpture, which is up in Cambridge University. These are really large-scale works, like because I came from working on a sort of architectural field. Although I was a cabinet maker doing tiny dovetails, I was kind of used to working on a large scale. So I'm really interested in materials and in structures. So I did a series of work looking at natural microscopic structures, where when you look under the microscope, you can actually see the physical structure of how things are actually made. Like people were quite complicated, and you can't really see that. But when you look at really tiny things, like a piece of pollen, you can actually see how all the filaments of whatever it is, like chitin or something. It's not that common, it is of cellulose, actually make up the actual structure. We did plankton, and then I did a sculpture which was like copying the structure of coral, like looking at tiny little how you have like a modular structure, but it's quite organic because each module is unique. And I thought it was quite interesting sort of like construction, and for me as a maker to then kind of mix a kind of like a sort of contextual sort of thing with it, and then you end up with something that is sort of that is richer than the two individual parts. And it's kind of interesting. When I originally saw the brief for this project, there were two things that kind of meshed really quickly. There was the there was the fact that it was kind of like to do with the sort of natural environment and the history of the area, and also with the actual site itself, of like being in a place where people move around it. I was already thinking about having sculptures that actually do something, so it is not just like a thing that you just stick down there, but it is something that that as people actually experience it, that they can actually relate to it in different ways. So an obvious one is like we're doing here, where you can see one thing from one angle and one thing from another angle, but also how it's actually constructed and how it's made. You can also relate that to how people will view it as well, because we've ended up with this aesthetic, which is basically directly from using wood, like in a really like with my woodwork. What I'm trying to do is like show some of the almost like the secrets of the wood, like you can kind of find the potential in a piece of wood. When you heat it, you can bend it and twist it in certain ways, and then people can understand what the material is. And then and with this piece, I've basically taken the exact same aesthetic, but because it's going to go outside near a train station, you obviously can't make it out of wood. But it was being designed, and it's going to be made in a really similar way. Heating the material and bending it to make these new forms, and also with the actual content of the sculpture of having a deer and a person together. There is a forest-dwelling creature that is quite shy and runs away when you see it. and then like a person standing there proud, and I thought to bring those two elements together was I just thought it was interesting. With the actual scale, you can see a model behind here. Here this is probably about 1:5 or 1:4 the scale model. I was envisioning the deer to basically be life size, like big sort of proud sort of stag, and then the person to be slightly larger than life size. So that's just the top portion here, and then you've got about the same below as well. And so in total, the whole sculpture will probably be about 4 or 5 meters high. But then I think we're going to raise it up on a plinth to make it higher still. So when you arrive on the train, you can see the sculpture from the platform looking across. And maybe when you see that, you'll see a person standing there. And it's like, what are they doing? Oh, it's a sculpture. And then and then you come out of the station, and then you can see a deer, and it's like it's the same thing. We are in my workshop at the moment, and the sculpture will be made here. What we do here is I try and outsource all the things that we can't do really well, but the things that only I can do, or only we can do in the workshop, and then we do here. So for instance, for this sculpture, we will be outsourcing all the cutting of the steel. So lots of strips of steel that have been cut beautifully and finished or really nicely will just arrive in the workshop, and then we have got oxypropane and other bending jigs and tools here, which we will use to then bend the steel with basically there are going to be 2 projectors like set up at 90 degrees to each other in the space, and then we will be these will be switched on all the time, projecting a picture of a deer or a person in the configured way that we wanted to do it in the actual workshop, and then there'll just be a process of bending the pieces with hot gas, like heating it with, and then bending and heating this bit and bending it, and all the time I'll be looking at the shadow from the projector. So it's quite a strange process. So you're kind of in the workshop and you're kind of like heating this bit and bending it, but then you're looking at 2 shadows at the same time. And it's a really weird process for making, but it's something that you can't outsource. You have to actually physically do it yourself. But again, that is just down to being in the workshop and spending a lot of time like configuring things and setting projector angles just perfectly. So then when you are walking around the roundabout, you can see these things happening within the sculpture, and hopefully it'll be a nice thing to have in your town.